There are a few money books I've read in my life that have helped me with everything from my career and business goals to my relationships and mental health, and they might help you as well. These are the 7 books that changed my life. Starting with book number 1, The Power of Broke by Vincent Chan. Yeah, the guy from Shark Tank. As Damon says, limitations can fuel creativity and innovation. I remember when I was growing up, my family didn't have much money. My parents would always try to save money any chance they could, which oftentimes meant taking a bunch of napkins from restaurants so we didn't have to buy them. McDonald's, Burger King's, food courts, you name it. And naturally, I adopted this frugal mindset when I grew older. So when I started a side hustle selling ebooks online, I didn't want to use any money to pay for ads. Not that I had much to spare anyway. Instead, I came up with a more creative way to get my ebook in front of potential buyers. I secretly infiltrated Facebook groups that I thought would be interested in the topic. I became part of their community and contributed and engaged with other members for days, sometimes even weeks. And then when I thought the time was just right, I slyly plugged that I was an author and would love their feedback on my newest book. On the first day of launch, I sold over 1,000 copies and immediately became an Amazon bestseller for that niche. As philosopher Drake once said, started from the bottom, now we're here. By the way, if you want to build a wealthier and healthier life, sign up for my free weekly newsletter, Rethinkable, link below. The second book is The Almanac of Naval Ravikant by Eric Jorgensen, which to this day is one of the most memorable books of my life. Naval Ravikant shows how we can optimize our lives for wealth rather than for money, and he makes a clear distinction between the two. He uses the example of a traditional office worker. A worker can make money by renting out their time, but they'll never amass wealth because of this equation. Your inputs are closely tied to your outputs. Like 8 hours of work equals 8 hours of earnings, meaning your earning potential is linear. If you want to generate wealth, you need to apply leverage. Basically a force multiplier that creates a disconnect between inputs and outputs, meaning your earning potential can now be exponential. In the book, Naval says there are 3 ways you can apply leverage. First is capital leverage, or having access to money, whether it be from an investor or Mr. Magic Lamp. The second is labor leverage, or having people work for you to achieve your objectives. The third is building a product with no marginal cost of replication. In other words, it's something you can produce once, and the impact of it can compound over time with 0 additional cost to make it again. Naval specifically talks about code and media, like a software product or a YouTube video, like this one. Thank you for watching, by the way. I distinctly remember reading this section of the book years ago and thinking, there's no way in hell that I'm ever gonna be able to do any of this. I don't have money, I don't have workers, I don't know how to code, and I'm an introvert. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized, you know what? Maybe I could try making YouTube videos and just see what happens. So I recorded my first video, then the second one, and so on. Fast forward, and now I have access to both capital and labor leverage. The only thing you need to get started is taking the first step. That small step turns into another, and then another, and soon the momentum will build, and before you know it, you've transformed your life. Too often, we inadvertently let our emotions and cognitive biases impact our finances, for the worst. Whether we want to start a side hustle, save for a really nice stapler, or go YOLO and invest our life savings into AMC. As Richard Peterson says in his book, Inside the Investor's Brain, we are our own worst financial enemies. Whether you lack a long-term strategy, you like to chase the hottest stock pick, or you spend all your money on plants. We all have our own preconceived idea of what money is and how it works or should be handled. If it makes you feel any better, it's not just you. Richard Peterson says, on average, mutual fund managers significantly underperform the markets due to psychological biases too. So even the big players fall for these traps. One of the most helpful things to do before you make any big financial decision is to just take a step back and breathe. That small break can help clear your mind so you can make a more rational and informed decision. This might sound corny, but sometimes when I'm really overwhelmed, I'm doubting myself, or feel like I'm about to make an impulsive decision based on fear or greed, I'll crank up the tunes and start busting down some moves in my chair. Whether I'm trying to get my bearings or I just want to make a more objective choice, 8 times out of 10, I'm able to think more rationally after doing this. You can let your emotions and biases control you, or you can control them. The truth is, most people shouldn't follow their passion. As Cal Newport writes in his book, So Good They Can't Ignore You, don't do what you love, but learn to love what you do. When I look at the advice from the hundreds of get-rich-quick videos and articles that I've read and watched, nearly every single one tells you to follow your passion. And the funny thing is, back when I believed I had to find something that I was passionate about, none of the stuff that I worked on became successful. I would spend weeks, months creating something that I was really passionate in and that I poured my soul into. But in the end, no one wanted to buy it. So what did I do? First, I broke down in a corner, obviously. Then, refusing to believe that what I built was terrible or that it needed to be improved, I just kept on trying to sell it, hoping that one day it'll just take off. It never did. Author Cal Newport is religious about adopting the craftsman mindset as a much better alternative to following your passion. The craftsman mindset is about focusing on what value you can offer to the world instead of focusing on what value the world can offer to you. If you only focus on the latter, you're gonna face more setbacks and miss out on a ton of opportunities. The next book is Who Moved My Cheese by Dr. Spencer Johnson. Too often, we don't like change because we're afraid. Change represents uncharted territory, which challenges our sense of safety and security. So instead of embracing change, we resist it and become complacent. We don't switch careers, start that YouTube channel, or learn how to glue eyes back onto Mr. Magic Lamp correctly. Who Moved My Cheese made me look at change and success in a completely different light. It made me realize that no matter how successful we become, our success isn't gonna last forever. Dr. Spencer Johnson says it's because success leads to complacency and bad habits. Chances are, when you feel like you've made it, you'll start to get comfortable. You feel like you don't have to wake up early anymore, that you don't have to work as hard, or you don't need to learn new skills, because you're already the best. But the problem with sitting on your success is that the world will continue to change. Dr. Johnson says if you do not change, you can become extinct. Your skills become outdated, your competitors catch up to your business, your promotions are given to someone else. So instead of resisting change out of fear, anticipate it and adapt to the new reality. If you're currently on your journey to success, this should serve to motivate you. Chances are the person or the business that you're trying to be better than will one day become too complacent and stop innovating, like BlackBerry, Blockbuster, and MySpace. And it's at that moment when you use everything you've learned to overtake them, like Apple, Netflix, and Facebook. The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene is one of those controversial books that you low-key wished you read. And it was this book that single-handedly made a huge impact on my professional career. Although no one wants to admit this, we all want power. Power is literally something that's part of our human nature. So there's no such thing as a group of people in the real world who don't want some form of it. But what's strange is that power is one of those taboo topics that no one likes talking about. The problem with not knowing the rules of power is that you won't know how to effectively navigate the harsh reality of the world until it's too late. Whether that's after you get fired, or after you get into a huge fight with your coworker, or after you get screwed over by a terrible business partner. These moments are all turning points in our lives, when we suddenly discover that we've been doing everything too naively, that we've been taken advantage of. Whether you're trying too hard to make people like you, or when you share too much information and you lose the upper hand, or you put too much trust in other people. The 36th Law of Power is one of my favorites. Disdain things you cannot have. Ignoring them is the best revenge. So over the years, I've worked on several different businesses, often having partnerships with other people. So for one business, I worked with somebody who I'm not gonna name. He initially seemed great, super motivated, but then I found out that, let's just say, things weren't going so well. We had different principles, approaches, and we would always clash with each other. So I decided to end the relationship because it wasn't helpful for either of us. And after I told him this, he just kept spamming me, complaining, saying that everything was all my fault, leaving angry voicemails for weeks. And the entire time, I just thought, I'm just gonna ignore it. I've got other stuff going on and it just wasn't worth it to respond. The 36th Law of Power states, by acknowledging a petty problem, you give it existence and credibility. The more attention you pay an enemy, the stronger you make him. And a small mistake is often made worse and more visible when you try to fix it. It is sometimes best to leave things alone. The Power of Less by Leo Babayuta is a masterclass in essentialism, the school of thought that's about identifying and prioritizing specific things to live a more successful and healthy life. The central theme of this book is that we all have too many things going on. You're working on 20 tasks at the same time. You have hundreds of unread emails. You have a TV show to watch, but you also want to hang out with friends. All three things, by the way, happened to me, except the part with friends. But when you embrace setting limits and only prioritizing the most important tasks, goals, and activities in your life, you can actually focus better and excel at each one, instead of being suboptimal with all of them. Leo Babatua writes, doing a huge number of things doesn't mean you're getting anything meaningful done. This book will completely change the way you view the world that often glorifies doing everything all at once and constant productivity. And that leads me to something that you've got to start accepting. And it's that even if you're doing everything you can to become successful, sometimes you might just not have enough time. And that might be because you don't know these 60-second habits that save me hours every week. Click here to save hours of your time so you can focus on what really matters.